Hello guys, today I want to show you how to bring in your models from Blender to Unreal Engine using these tools over here. The main component being the Dataprep Asset and the Substitution Table. What this allows you to do is have a non-destructive workflow, meaning that if you have to make changes to your model, you can simply open up your Dataprep Asset. Here we have created a recipe, which we're going to go through in this video. You can simply import the updated geometry, click a button, and it'll automatically go through these steps. In this case, we're using a substitution table to automatically replace and add materials to our object. And the substitution table is something we create using Chat-GPT in this video. We're going to go through that as well. And here we basically specify which Blender material to replace with an Unreal Engine material. Here I'm using the Automotive Materials Pack, which is free in the Epic Games store. So with that introduction, I hope you enjoyed this video and yeah, enjoy. Let's dive into this. What we see here in front of us is a 3D model of a Smart for 2. This is not a high-end model. It is just something I've got lying around. And yeah, it's nothing too complex, so it's good as an example piece. But what I'm showing you here today, I have been able to scale across real production models with over 100 million polygons, tens of thousands of parts, and yeah, visualize them for final product rendering in Unreal Engine. So the first thing I like to do is group my file in a nice way. Personally, I'll usually separate my file into 5 different groups. So interior, exterior, wheels, glass, and then the seats. In this case, the seats are actually just one mesh already combined. As already stated, this is a very simple, file. So nothing too crazy, so there's no point in me exporting the seats separately. But in a production workflow, you'll have every single stitch separate on a seat. You'll oftentimes have, or you'll be working with 150% models, meaning that you won't only have 100% of the car, but you'll have an additional, well, we call it 150% because you'll have all the different variants. So that means different seat types with different illumination, different switches on the sides of the seats. Some might be electronic seats, some might be manual seats, depending on the variant you go for. If you've got like a premium variant of a car, you might have the electric seats. If you've got a basic model of the car, you'll have the manual seats, and so on. So, you'll usually have loads of stuff going on, but here it's very simple. So I've only separated it into 4 different groups. I'm just going to unhide everything. So the exterior is just the outside shell. The interior is, well, everything that's on the inside. Then we've got the wheels. In my case, not rigged, but this workflow should also work with rigged models, and then glass. Now, the reason I'm exporting glass separately is because I am currently playing around with Unreal Engine 5.3, which does support nanite on transparent objects. I'm not sure if Unreal Engine 5.2 does support it. Anyway, just to be safe, I'm exporting the glass separately so that I can enable nanite on all of the parts, and I could keep it off for the glass. So yeah, that is what we're doing here. All right, so the tool that we're going to be using is Datasmith Export. This is the tool. This is the GitHub repository from Andres Botero. I hope I didn't butcher that completely. And yeah, essentially this is just a format that Unreal Engine can import using a Dataprep asset. And it's basically a tool that allows you to import Datasmith files and automatically execute a chain of events. We're going to look at that later, but for now, you want to, well, first of all, download that file. Let me show you how that's done. Let's open that up again. So essentially, you'll just go and download the latest version. Here you go, download the latest development version. And once that's downloaded, you'll then go into your Blender preferences, add-ons, and then install it just like you would any other add-on. Once that's done, you can go to your exports, and here you'll have the Datasmith file export add-on. You'll probably find it here in File, Export, and then Datasmith. Let's go ahead and export these files. So we're going to actually hide everything, and then select all, Export, Datasmith. All right, so we want to make sure to only export the selected objects. Make sure to name your objects correctly in a way that makes sense. In my case, I've got the smart for 2 and I'm exporting the glass group. Then we're going to export that Datasmith file. Then we're going to do the same for the wheels. Select everything, export, and then we'll rename that to wheels. And what happens here is you get this Datasmith file, and then all of the actual geometry is saved in a folder, but you don't really have to worry about any of that. All right, so the next step would be to create a new Unreal Engine project. All right, so we've got the project open. I'm just going to go ahead and create a new folder in the content folder. We're just going to call that Smart for 2. There we go. And what we're going to do here is start off by creating a new Dataprep asset. All right, so we're going to open up this Dataprep asset. What we've got here is essentially a viewport where the model will be imported into. At the bottom on the left-hand side, we've got some building blocks that allow us to execute multiple different actions. And on the right-hand side, we've got some additional settings where we can import the Datasmith asset. So let's start off with selecting the file we want. So we're going to click the plus, Datasmith file importer. Then we're going to choose the file that we want. So we're going to start off with the exterior. We're going to select the Smart for 2 exterior file, open that up. Now here, the folder, this is where it's going to place all of the data. So over here, I'm going to create a new folder. We're going to actually copy the name of this one. There we go. So that's the Smart for 2 exterior, and we're going to select that inside of our Dataprep asset. So folder, Smart for 2 exterior. And then it's also going to create a new map with all of this data inside of it. So I'm just going to call that L for level, and then we'll keep the rest. All right, so now we're going to start off by essentially applying the materials to our model. Because if I go ahead and import this model, you'll see that it imports all of the materials from Blender, which is great. But what I want to do is replace these materials with different materials, with actual, Unreal Engine materials that are a bit more high quality. So what we need for that is something called a substitution table. Essentially a list saying replace material A with material B. And we're going to create that in a minute as well. But first, let's create this recipe that will then execute all of the steps that we want. So we need 2 or 3 different things. First of all, we want to apply the materials that we then create using the substitution table. And then we want to merge all of our different objects here. So right now we've got a bunch of different parts here. And I essentially want all of this to be merged into one single exterior mesh. And then we're going to clean up the graph as well using these building blocks. So first, let's go ahead and grab the substitute material by table, actually. This is the one we need. And let's rename this first column to apply materials. Then we're going to create a merge node. We're going to drag that to the right. We could drag it below it, but I just like having it a bit more clear. So first it's going to start on the left and it's going to work its way to the right hand side. So we're going to call this cleanup. And now it's going to merge everything, and now we can tell it what to call the new object, and we're going to call it Smart for 2 exterior. In fact, let's also add a SM at the beginning for a static mesh. Then we're going to compact the scene graph. So we're going to drag that below. So this is going to essentially remove all of the nodes that aren't being used. And then as a last step, we want to delete unused. So with that done, we can then click execute, which is going to apply the materials, merge, and so on. However, the materials section, we still have to, create this substitution table. So let's first of all save this blueprint, so this Dataprep asset, and we'll execute this once we have our table. Okay, so to create our substitution table, we're going to right click, we're going to go to miscellaneous, data table, and then here we're going to select a material substitution data table. All right, we're going to call that substitution table, and we're going to open that up. So what we have here is, first of all, we can add a new row. Then here we can specify the material name, which is essentially the name from Blender. So if we open up Blender, let's just see here, car paint, we can now replace our search string. We can specify the search string as car paint and now replace everything that has the material car paint with a different material. In this project, I don't have any different materials, so I'm going to go ahead and quickly import the automotive material pack, which is free from the Epic Games Marketplace. So that's this one over here. You can just click on Add to Project. So here we go, automotive materials. So in the substitution table, I will go ahead and dock the content browser. So we've got direct access. And then here, materials, exterior, car paint, and let's just go ahead and make this blue. All right. So now what's going to happen is when we execute our recipe over here, it's going to find all of the materials that have the name car paint and replace them with the material, in this case called car paint dark blue. Okay. So let's just go ahead and save this substitution table. In our case, we only have one single entry. We are going to add all of the different rows in an automated fashion. We're actually going to use Chat-GPT for that. So we don't have to add, 20, 30 different rows manually. I've actually used this for 200, 300 different rows to automate all of those materials using Chat-GPT, which has been very useful. So yeah, now we can simply select our substitution table. And now that we've already imported the model, we can click execute, which is going to execute all of these steps. And then that result is still going to be visualized here in this Dataprep asset in our viewport. And once we're happy with the result, we can then click commit, which is then going to essentially publish it into our level. Now, the beauty with this is that we can make changes inside of Blender. We can update materials. We can update the model. We can create new meshes, edit the UVs, and so on, just kind of making updates to the 3D geometry. And when we're happy with it, we can keep on making updates, or exporting updates from Blender to Unreal Engine. And because we already have these recipes now, all you have to do is open up the recipe, click import. It'll automatically import the latest version as long as you overwrite the files. You might want to make backups and then, have different versions, but then you just select the newest version, click open, and then click a button, or first of all import. It's really, really easy to iterate and update your models, because again, with a single click of a button, you'll have all of the materials updated and applied, and you just essentially end up with a clean version of your updated file inside of Unreal Engine, with a matter of maybe 2 or 3 button clicks. So it's really, really nice. Okay, so let's just pretend that we're happy with this result. We're going to click commit. Obviously, we've only created a single row in our substitution table, so we've still got some work to do there. We will finish that in a second using Chat-GPT. For now, we're just going to click commit. The next step for me would be to create a blueprint, because once we've got our 5 different models inside of the engine, we want to be able to control the entire vehicle as one unit, and that's where blueprints are very helpful. So we're going to create a blueprint class. We're going to use an actor. We're going to call this smart for 2. We're going to start or add BP at the beginning for blueprint. And let's actually move that into the smart for 2 folder. And then we are going to open it. We are going to go into our smart for 2 folder, and we're going to look for the geometry. So the geometry that has been imported and created through our recipe is going to be inside of the folder that we created. So if you remember, inside of the recipe, we have this folder that we selected, and that is this folder here. So we created that, we selected it, and this is where the Dataprep recipe or the Dataprep asset dumped all of that data. So we go in there, pipeline, geometries, and there we go. So now inside of the blueprint, we're going to drag it into here, and there we now have our exterior. So we're going to repeat this for the other parts. So let me save this, close that, close the substitution table, and let's just compile, save, and close this. Okay, now the next step for me is to duplicate this. We're going to do the same for the interior. We're going to copy the name, not copy the whole folder, because we don't want the contents. So empty folder, interior, then inside of this recipe, we're going to rename the final result of the merge to interior as well. We're going to select the interior Datasmith file. We're going to select the interior folder to output it all into, and then we're also going to make sure that the level name has an L underscore in front of it. With that done, we can click import. There we have the interior. Again, substitution table not doing anything right now, so we should start working on that next. First of all, I'm going to right click on it and we're going to export as JSON. I'm going to export it as a SMART 2 substitution table, and it's going to be exported as a JSON file, and then we're going to open up that JSON file. So this is what the substitution table looks like. It's really simple. We've got the name of the row, we've got the search string, we've got the string match, and then the material replacement. What we're going to do is open up Blender. I've actually got a script also generated by Chat-GPT, which will spit out a list of all of the materials in my scene. Let me actually just open up that file. List or scene material names. What I typed into Chat-GPT was literally create a script that lists all of the materials in the scene in a new text window for Blender 3.5, right? And it'll then generate this script, and it did it with a single click for me. I didn't have to iterate or anything. So if we do that, if we now click play, voila, these are all of the materials that exist in my Blender file. So I'm just going to copy them, and then what we can do is actually go to Chat-GPT. All right, so it's working. Let me show you what I've done. I told Chat-GPT I'm currently working on creating a material substitution table in Unreal Engine. To speed things up, I have converted the Unreal Engine substitution table into a JSON file. Here is an example of one material, car paint, already in the table. And then I pasted those few lines. Add the following materials and make sure to keep the material replacement slot empty. The reason I did that is because we are going to later on in Unreal Engine specify what they should be replaced with. And then here's the list that we had Blender spit out for us, this list over here. I just pasted that, and there we go. So it did it. We've got our new row, we've got the search string, glass dark, and what we do have to do is, instead of saying contains, we want it to say exact match, because otherwise, if we have, for example, a material called black car paint interior and black car paint exterior, and they're two different materials, contains will match both of them, and that's not great. So what we need is this, the string match to be exact match. So let's quickly update Chat-GPT. Please replace contains. Please replace the string match contains with exact match for all entries. Oh, it's misspelled replace, but looks like it got the gist, which is great. I hope that that is what it looks like in Unreal. Let's actually quickly check this out. So let's go back, export the substitution table as JSON, save, yes, and then we're going to reopen that file. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it seems like we actually need it spelled together. So that is a mistake indeed. Please replace the string match contains with exact match. That should be correct. The string new row, search string car pane, string match, exact match. Perfect. Okay, so now we finally have something. All right. Now, the reason we're doing this is because I don't want to manually copy and paste all of these lines and manually then switch out the material. All right. In this case, it's not too terrible. You could probably do this in 10, 15 minutes. But this is a very, very simple scene. We're only working with a handful of materials. In a production, or even, you know, if you've got some complex scenes of your own, you can easily end up with 50, 60, 100, 200 different materials, if not more. And that's when this becomes a matter of, you know, a day or two to do this. And that is why, you know, tools like this are fantastic. So let's go all the way up. We're going to copy. We're going to paste it. Let's see if the format is correct. Looks good, I think. Let's save this. So this is now overwriting. Let's just Control S. So this is overwriting the file that we created in Unreal Engine. And now when we open up the substitution table, we're going to go to the data table details. And here we can now specify the source file path. I believe that's this one, yep. And then we're going to select the JSON file, open that up, re-import. Okay. It looks like it's not happy with the rows all being called new row. So let's tell GPT to fix that as well. Please update the name with a different numerical name for every row. Hopefully that'll work. So we've got our exact match, we've got the search string name of the material, and we've got our new name. Okay, so replace that, Control S to save. We're going to go back into Unreal, then we're going to re-import, and there we go. So here we have all of our materials, and now we can actually start substituting. So for a black material, I'm not exactly sure what this was in Blender, so that is why this other script that I let Chat-GPT create is useful. Here I can actually select the different materials. So here I can see black, and it's now going to select all of the objects that have this material. So let's do that again. Black. Okay, so this is more of a blackout material. So let me actually create my own material that does that. So we're going to duplicate this material instance. We're just going to call this blocker. We're going to set the tint all the way to black, and we're going to make it pretty rough. So max of 1, min of, yeah, that. Save. And then in the substitution table, we're just going to drag it into there. Then blue, let's find out what that is. So this is a one-time investment that you need to spend some time on. But once you've got the list finished and, you know, done, you have a beautiful workflow where whenever you've got changes made inside a Blender, you export your 4 or 5 different files. You then, with a single click, import that file inside of Unreal, inside of your recipe. You import it, you then execute the recipe, and then you commit it. And then within a minute or two, you have your updated file in a non-destructive workflow loaded inside of your Unreal scene. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish the substitution table, and then I'm going to get back to you. All Right, so I finished dragging and dropping all of the materials into the different rows. I've saved it, and now as the last step, just to be sure that I don't break anything, we're going to export this one last time, because at the moment the JSON file that we've exported still has empty slots, so if we were to re-import, all of my work would be lost. So export as JSON, and we're just going to overwrite that substitution table with our final result. Okay, so now we are going to execute the recipe on our interior, and it should end up with a nice looking result. Again, this is pretty simple, so it's not going to be over the top. Let's see what I end up with here. So we've got some leather, we've got some plastic injection here, got a bit of chrome, bit of a pattern. Probably not the best material choice that I made there, and yeah. You can see it works. Okay, so let's go ahead and commit. Now, the problem with the Dataprep recipe is that when you click commit, it will load that file into the currently open level. So what we're actually going to do here is delete everything that we've got here. So that meaning the interior and exterior of the car, because I don't actually want those individual meshes. I want my blueprint. So we're going to drag that into here. And now what we can do here is go back into that blueprint and then add not only the exterior, but also the interior of our Smart for 2. Grab that geometry, and there we go. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this for the other 2 or 3 meshes. So we're going to duplicate this recipe. We're going to do the same for the wheels. We're going to replace the file with wheels. We are going to add a new folder called Smart for 2 wheels. We're going to select that folder as our output. We're going to create a new level called L_wheels. And then also here we want the result to be named SM Smart for 2 wheels. We're going to save that. We're going to import, give that a few seconds to load. Almost there. And you can see all of your meshes and your imported materials that have been loaded in with Blender on the left-hand side and the hierarchy on the right side. And then when we click execute, all of that is being merged down into a single mesh node. And there we go. So if we have a look at our rims, I really quickly smashed these materials on there, so they might not be the best choice. You might want to replace them in your substitution table. If that's the case, you know, if you want a different tie material like a rubber shiny, you can do that. You can then save that substitution table with the change, but then you will have to re-import and execute. It might work to simply execute if you still have it loaded. Let's actually test that. Okay, it does. Cool. So yeah, in that case, you could just execute again and again. Again, it is going to split it into this main level. Not a problem. Select that, delete it, apply to all, yes. And then we're going to go into our blueprint, and we're going to add the wheels in here. We actually don't want it as a child of the exterior. There we go. Compile, save. They're not in the right position. Let's check that out. So they have a bit of an offset. Why is that? Not entirely sure what happened here. So this is actually quite interesting. Okay, let's see what happened here. Just in case you guys have the same problem. The wheels subgroups. Let's just hide everything. Select everything and apply all transformations. There we go. And then let's see if that fixed the issue. So we're going to select everything, export Datasmith, override the wheels, select only. God, my English today. Selected objects only, export, and then we're going to jump back into Unreal. We're going to go back into the wheels. We're going to import those updated wheels. And here you can see the beauty of this workflow. You can make changes and iterations very quickly. If there's a problem, it's not that big of a deal. Because the alternative workflow, importing the FBX, you'd have to then manually apply all of these materials again and again. So we're going to execute, and with a single click, everything happens automatically. So that is the beauty of this data prep recipe. And finally, commit. And again, it'll then save all of this data into that folder that we created. It'll override the existing data in that folder. So then if we go back to here, the wheels, let's just delete those out. Static mesh, drop it in there. Are these maybe offset? That is really odd. Interior, exterior, wheels. Can't see anything weird. Alright, whatever, let's just move those up. Honestly, can't tell you what the issue there is. Probably something I'm overlooking because I'm trying to speed through this. But anyway, we now have our single blueprint over here, where all of our interior, exterior, and wheel meshes are contained within. Now, let's see what's going on over here. This is probably some clipping. Now, we haven't done the exterior fully. We only applied the car paint shader. So let's update that as well. So Smart for 2 exterior recipe. Going to re-import the exterior. And then make sure that the entire new substitution table that we created gets applied. So execute. Okay, so here we have all the plastics, and the lights are looking pretty decent. So with a single click, it's already updated. Okay, now let's add the final geometry group, which was the glass. So again, duplicate, replace this with glass, create a new group called glass, open up that new recipe, replace the file that's going to be loaded with the correct one, specify the correct output folder, specify the correct output level name, and then also here the new node name. Lovely. Save. I'm actually going to press Control Shift and S to save everything we've done so far, so all of the open blueprints and everything else will get saved. And then import. There we go. So all of our glass meshes are going to be loaded. And then execute. Lovely. So if we commit that, go to our main level. Here we're going to select everything down there, remove it, apply to all, yes. And then in our blueprint, we shall add our glass, which is here. Let's make sure to select that node up there so it drops it at the correct position. Perfect. Okay, so here we have our final vehicle. All right, so I hope that, this was insightful. I hope you learned something. I hope you see the benefits of this workflow. Again, this is something I picked up from a bunch of different studios that I've been able to work with in the past year. And yeah, it just allows for quick iterations, updating. And I do highly recommend exporting your files in sensible groups. For this vehicle, you could easily just group everything into a single file and export it as a single file. But then loading times will be longer, especially when you're working with large complex files with millions and millions of polygons, hundreds of thousands of different pieces and meshes. The loading times can take 10-15 minutes just to import, and then you've got to wait another 5 or 10 minutes to execute. And by the time you've done that, you've been waiting for ages. So that is why it's very useful to separate it into these different sub-assemblies, so that if there is a material or a UV that's wrong on the wheels, you can only reload the wheels. Yeah, so again, hope that was useful, and I'll see you guys in the next video. If you do have any questions, make sure to pop them down below. I am still learning Unreal Engine. There's still so much to learn there. But yeah, this is a really cool workflow that I have picked up, and I wanted to share that. So yeah, see you guys. Take care.